You know, I would say, as you can see, I'm an African-American Muslim. And a lot of the climate after 9/11 was definitely, I would think, more hostile in general. But it was really aimed at a lot of my Muslim brethren who come from other places in the world, who talk with an accent, who look like they're from somewhere in the Middle East or someplace like that. So I would say they suffered the brunt of a lot of the hostility, but we still felt it. We still felt it, you know. But one of the things that one of the other byproducts of 9/11, quite frankly, is that it ushered in many more opportunities for me to be in front of audiences like you. So that because people became curious, people wanted to know, what is this? What's going on? Who are these people? What do they really believe, etc. So it really created or facilitated an opportunity for persons like me and others to have a chance to, under more peaceful environment, to field questions and talk very candidly about what Muslims believe, what should Muslims' position be on this or that, and how should we be interacting with our neighbors. So it was twofold, really. Yes, you know, I think when you look at, I want to separate this a little bit, this idea. I think that human conflict has always existed. Now, what we use as the medium for conflict changes. So right now, you know, in many ways, religion is used as a medium for conflict. I think there will always be conflict as long as there are human beings. I think there will never be a time, I just don't believe that historically or even from my religious text, that there will ever be a time that everyone is okay with everyone. And I mean, there'll be time when there's more problems than others, and sometimes there'll be lesser problems. But for that to go away, I think that's that's an expectation that we're creating that is not based in reality. I think that this is the idea of human beings coming together, gathering in a space, even like this. After a while, if we're in this space together for too long, there's going to be a problem somewhere. There's probably problems right now, I don't know. But you guys are so well behaved here, I can't tell, right? But the idea is, but that's a human thing. That's not even a religious thing. I think that the travesty or the crisis is when they're doing this or facilitating their conflict under the guise or the auspices of, I believe in God. And I got it right and you have it wrong.
Right, because God is on my side.
Exactly, because God is on my side. To take that kind of elitist idea, that we all do this from time to time, that we believe we're in the right, and therefore we're justified in doing certain things to others. So conflict will always be. We just pray that the religion is not always marched out as the cause of that conflict. I think that, you know, there is first of all, we're in America, and people should be free to worship wherever they like. I think that's first and foremost, and that's really the beauty of America, the genius of America. I think that in that time, in the time after that, I can see why there was a lot of angst around this idea of having a mosque where essentially it was a situation where people felt these same people are responsible for what took place here. Why would we want to have them establish a mosque here? And their simple response is that we don't condone what took place here, and we want to represent what really is the religion right here in this symbolic sense. It was more of a symbolic gesture, in my opinion. Now, do I think that they should have it? I think people should be free to choose and go through the necessary channels to do that. I don't think it's such a bad thing, but I also understand that it's really symbolic, and it's in time, it was one of those situations where perhaps it really was, you know, if you have like it's kind of like if you ever had a twisted ankle or rolled ankle at any time, or you kind of sprain your ankle, And if somebody came and kind of hit your ankle while it was already sprained, they probably wouldn't be your best friend. You're probably like, wait a minute, hey, I don't want anything touching this, And I think that America really was in a situation where it was wounded, injured. And this was seen as, someone coming to kind of agitate the injury. So hence the response was as it was. So we can see arguments on both sides. I think this was an effort to say that Islam is not going anywhere, that we claim this society as members of this country like everybody else. But I also, think that the discussions of the timing of it and things like that, perhaps it could have been done a little bit better. That's my own personal opinion about that. I think some of their behavior around or how they go about things definitely could be attributed to that, for sure. But I also think that our religious traditions, many of them speak specifically to these things. So there is the possibility for me to have a difference of opinion that I conclude from my faith tradition about any of these matters, and it could be different from you or whoever else, but at the end of the day, based on my religious tradition, I know that people have to be free to choose on their own. If you ask me my opinion, I would say my opinion is this based on my faith tradition. I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. But the idea of me enforcing my idea on someone else, that's a problem. That's a problem. So can we have differences of opinion on all these matters? Sure, we can. I think that that's really that's a democracy. And I think that that's what America really represents in its best self. It represents us being able to have a difference of opinion and us to be passionate about those things and us to put them in public discourse, have public conversation about them, but to also be civil at the end of the day. I shouldn't feel threatened by you, nor should you be by me, because we're on the opposite sides of an argument. I think there are a number of them, but two things that I would say is that in some way that we don't believe in the same God that others do. I think that's very dangerous, because that in and of itself can help the spiritually intoxicated justify causing harm to someone else when they feel like their faith is wrong. They don't believe in God like we do. That can have what we call collateral damage. Okay, and then the other I would just say is that we are inherently, or our religion promotes violence. It promotes violence. Is there violent accounts in the Quran that's described? It is. But just like many things that you will read as you in school or in college, as you in the future, there's a certain thing called context. It's called context. That means if you read a piece of information by itself, you can conclude a thing about it. You can say, based on this sentence or paragraph, I conclude this. But if you have the opportunity to study the context of what came about when this thing was said, and it puts it again in perspective, then perhaps what you're reading or seeing, well, you might view it differently, or it could even change the whole meaning of it for you, because you have now context. You have a bigger lens or bigger focus to see it in, and it's not standing alone or by itself, but it's in succession to certain things or preceding other things, but it's in a bigger focus, and then perhaps it would change even the meaning. So I think the context is very important in that way.
Speaking of context.
Sure. This was a situation where, and I'll just go right to the text. In the Quran itself, in our scripture, you know, God says that to don't partake, and alcohol itself is not mentioned explicitly. Okay, what it says is don't engage in things that will it's considered in today's language that will be like mood altering substances.
Like clouding the mind.
That clouds the mind. That clouds the mind. So it translates into alcohol, but you know there are many things that can cloud your mind. You know, today the kids use syrup and all this other kind of stuff that gets them intoxicated. They can use these kind of things and other illicit drugs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really more of a category than one thing in specific. But in that time, you know, it was a situation where alcohol was prevalent. So people thought it talked about, but the Quran in itself doesn't mention alcohol per se. It gives a whole category of things that says this. And it said that in them is some benefit. The Quran acknowledges there's some benefit in these things, but it says, but the harm outweighs the benefit. So it really becomes a principle that, you know, you can say, oh, there's good in this, there's good in that, and that sort of thing. We can use this from medicinal purposes and that sort of thing. And perhaps that's true, but for us, we have to discern, does the harm outweigh the benefits of something? So hence, if you go online, Google this today, the number of alcohol-related deaths in this country.
Somebody with a computer.
Versus the total number of illegal drug deaths related to that, and see which number is greater. See which number is greater. So for us, the harm outweighs its benefit. So we choose, from God's instruction, not to partake. Now, last little side note, am I suggesting to you that no Muslims drink alcohol? I'm not suggesting that to you. I'm suggesting that from our scripture, we're told to stay away from it. But Islam fully represents the idea that people are free to choose and deal with the outcome of their choice. Really, there are two main holidays, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is something that's also debated among Muslim circles. But the two official, quote-unquote, official holidays in the Islamic lifestyle would be, they call the one is called the Eid al-Fitr. Eid al-Fitr. The Eid al-Fitr is a day that we commemorate or celebrate after we've completed 30 days of fasting in the month of Ramadan. So it's a day of feasting, a day of gift giving, etc. Okay. So that's a holiday. I mean, you know, the kids get all kinds of gifts and presents, and it's a real nice to do. And then there's another one called the Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha. And I can spell this if you need to have that. But the idea is that one is at the completion of Ramadan, the fasting, and the other is at the completion of the Hajj. Every year.
Which is which? Remind me. I'm typing it.